Hey, it's Mac with PriceActionTradingSystem.com, and it's Monday. It's October 17th. This will be our chart lesson for the day. And you can see it looks like we're finally trying to bounce out of here on the daily chart. I don't see, I mean, we do have a triple test here with a fairly bullish bar, but it looks congested to me. So I don't see any reason. We're still below the midline. We're the oversold conditions are well covered now, so we're not so oversold anymore. So, and notice how we've gapped up here, and that's still just some of the momentum left over from the fairly bullish day. When we go to the 2000 tick chart, what you'll see is most of this movement came early this morning, and the rest of the day we were just sideways. So it's really hard to say that it was it was a strong bullish day, but most of the day we were going sideways. So um, lots of selling in here, and we've gapped up now. So this is overnight. We could continue to go higher. My guess is we'll turn down and fill that gap, even if we're going to go higher tomorrow. So we'll see if we climb out here tomorrow, if we're going to turn back down. It's just hard to say right now. To me, it just looks like more sideways congestion at this point. So you can see the strong support across here. Right around 3,600 seems to be the line in the sand. If we break below that, I would say we'd probably head and test the lower side of this channel. That would be my guess, but we'll see what happens. So let's flip over to the 2000 tick chart and you can kind of see what I'm talking about. Okay, here's our 2000 tick chart. You can see we had this spike in channel up. It looks like a two-tiered channel. Maybe this is an overshoot in the end. It's very possible. But usually an overshoot doesn't last that long and continue to go higher. So I'm thinking this is probably, the midline looks correct here. So we had a break here and we never really got a new high for the day. Prices kept trying, but maybe that's why they didn't sell off, because they hadn't made that new high yet. Maybe they're still trying to make a new high. And you can see where we've gapped open, and now we're already starting to sell off there on the breakout. Of course, we're in a new trading day, so prices may not react to today's price action at all. I mean, they can, but sometimes they don't. So it's really hard to say there. But anyway, let's zoom in here. There's not a lot of trades today, unfortunately. There's just so much sideways junk action that it's and when it does take off, it just takes off, and so there's not a lot of opportunity. So anyway, it is what it is, and we'll go through the trades that are here, and I'll kind of talk about the chart and what I see. But you can clearly see we spiked up, and you can see that trend line working up there. When we came back to it, it just shot straight through. So let's zoom in. 7 o'clock came right in here in this little congested area. I didn't mark this trade. I think this is before 7 a.m. Yeah, 6:52. If you were sitting here then, there's a triple test there. You might take that. And then we got the little failed break lower, which maybe you take that. It's also a second entry, although we're not looking for second entries here. But you may play it as a second entry. A lot of times you want to wait on a higher low, which you get that, but then there's no place to go long there. But if you just wait a few minutes, you get a failed second entry short. And technically, the failed second entry happened here, but this is really kind of it comes back and then it goes higher right there. So, but to me, it still looks like two legs up in a correction. So I like this to go long as treating it as a failure. And off it goes. And this is one of those really strong trends that I talk about. Notice how shallow the corrections are. Lots of little bars with stems, look like dojis and so forth. That's a strong trend, even if it doesn't look like it. And so pretty much anytime prices come back, if you understand this and you're fairly experienced, every time it comes back to that trend line, it gives you a good signal bar. Here, this was an engulfing one. I don't know, I'd wait and go long there, but I wouldn't have been afraid to enter that on the engulfing bar when it broke lower and turned up. And if you just did that on any bar, and even this one, maybe it doesn't quite get back to the trend line. I think this trend line is pretty accurate, but that's so close it's hard to say. So even that one you probably could have entered on. Pretty sure it would have worked. Yeah, I mean there's 2 points there. So, um, but anyway, then we get the close outside. That's actually 2 legs back. We didn't get back to the EMA, but then it makes this high or low. You probably take that one too. I mean, there's enough room, and boom, off it goes. That is a super strong trend, and you can see even after the break, the corrections are very shallow until we get the move up here to the top, and it takes the upper side of the trend channel to turn prices lower. Again, I don't think you want to go short because your main trend line's still in play. Eventually we did get a channel working down here, and you got a second entry short. Notice this is a double bottom, first entry, second entry. So maybe you take that trade because it's a long way back to here, and this looks like it's pretty much over now. There's some sideways action here too, but maybe you take that trade. I marked it, so because you can clearly see this channel, and even if you played it where this was the down, you're still at the same place because there is a little channel here. You get your close outside. There's a second entry right there, but it's not a very good signal bar, and this just looks sideways. So that just looks like a first entry to me. And then there's your second entry. So you'd still expect a retest of the low on this channel or this channel, however you saw it. So that's why I marked that one. That's a pretty good sell-off right there. And then we're just working sideways. I don't see any longs here, and I don't see any shorts I'd want to take either. And then it takes off again. There is a failure right here, but you don't really have this trend line confirmed until way up here, and I just don't see taking a failure way up here. Actually, your failure's here. I'm sorry. Notice there's your new low, so first entry, second entry, and sometimes if it was a confirmed trend line, I'd say, hey, maybe you still go long right there on the failure because we had this huge strong trend earlier, and it may get another leg up, but you need a confirmed trend line, and that's just the first swing back there, and you don't confirm it till way up here, and so you don't want to go long up there because it's just a first entry. And then we get a close outside, new high all in one bar. It comes back and it's just kind of working sideways there, but it finally breaks higher and then turns back down. Okay, sorry I had a slight interruption, but we got a triple test here. Notice we're coming up. You get the close outside, you make a new high, and you come back, you test it a third time, and you get this big bearish bar. You're a little ways from the EMA. I like that one for a short. Again, this is an uptrend, so you got to be careful. So I did mark it green, but I think this is good enough to at least expect to get a short out of it. And if we're headed back to the trend line, maybe you get a lot more. This thing just drops that's a pretty good trade. This thing drops like a rocket, and then it's just kind of chopping sideways after that. Again, I don't see any shorts or longs I like in here. It's just congested, really. And then it falls out of there and drops again. There's a lower high here, but it's right into that key entry point. And this is a good example of why you usually wait on a higher low or something, or a reversal or something here, because we're clearly trending lower. And it looks like we're in a downtrend here. And so even though there's room to get out here, and maybe you even say, hey, I got a failed break lower here. We already failed once before. You got to be real careful here. If we'd been trending up strongly when it hit this trend line, I'd say probably you'd want to go long here. But in this case, this is a good example why you need at least a higher low or a second entry or something, because you can clearly see every time we go higher here, we're making a lower high. That's not a good sign. that means we're going lower. Now you would expect that, hey, there's a chance we're going to bounce here because that's the main trend line, as you can see from way down here. But you can get tripped up here. Wait on a higher low, or a reversal would probably be best, especially since this trend line's in play. You'd want to see it get above that and maybe trap somebody and then go higher. So if you got trapped there, I mean, that's just technically that's a first, second, third, that's a fourth entry. And just because it's a key entry point does not mean you want to take it. So because this can happen to you. And this thing just drops. Get a little overshoot, a close outside, a couple legs to a new low, and then it's going higher again. There's a second entry here, but it's an inside bar. There's a lower high here. And technically, I would like this trade here, except for the fact that it's just got too much stem. So you can't really take that. We don't have a new low yet on this break. But notice what happens. We get a new low, and then we're going the other way. And somebody will probably say, why don't you have a trend line here? Well, that's the retest, and usually you don't draw the trend lines, although you can. So if you think it helps, you draw them. And this one's going to look something like this. And there's a second entry here, but this was an engulfing bar. Actually, it's not a second entry because it broke higher here, then it drops on down. So there's no entry there until you get two legs down, and there's a second entry here, but we still don't have a new high. So you're looking for I like maybe going long there just to ride it back to the EMA, and maybe it shoots on up for the new high here. But in the end, we just end up going sideways. Now there is a little bit of a trend down here. In the end, I think the range wins out, but you can't argue that there wasn't a trend here because it does get confirmed here. It just, the trend, you can see that support holds, fails out the top, and it just holds into the rest of the day. So I think you were better off to play the trend, or I'm sorry, the range, which is how I played it. And this is really tempting here. There's not a lot of room back to the EMA right there, which when you're going sideways, you don't worry so much about the EMA anyway. But what I'd want to see is a higher, I'd want to see a double bottom or a higher low or something like that with a nice bar before I'd go long on a second. If you got that, it's probably a second entry because by the time you get way up here, it's not a higher low anymore. So you really need a second entry with a higher point there or something, and you don't get it. And then it fails out the top. Maybe you take that trade right there. I think that, no, that still doesn't quite give us a new high, but you figure this breakout's going to fail, and they're so far away from the EMA. Maybe you take that trade, especially on a range here. Again, I think you're better off to wait on something lower. And then there's a second entry short here. The signal bar is not good enough, but if you look, you're coming down and you go first entry, and then it turns down again and then comes back up on a second entry. So that's a failed second entry as well as a second entry short. So in that case, you could take that trade. And I like that trade just to try to get a scalp, and maybe we're headed to the other side, or maybe we're headed lower for the day. But it drops on down. Get a close outside, and it goes higher first, but notice how it comes back and still makes a new low before it goes higher again. And I don't see any reason to go long here, but notice you come up here and you get a little double top, and so you try to go, you get one leg down with the first entry, second leg down with the second entry, so that's a failure. It is right into the EMA. It is a little bit of a neutral kind of bar, but we don't really care that much on a trap, and I guarantee that's going to trap some longs that are thinking we should be going to the high, and they don't realize that we hadn't retested this low. And you may not retest this low, but you probably at least get a scalp out of that, even if it's going to turn up. But notice what it does. It goes all the way down until it finally makes a new low, and then you get a higher low right here with this big bullish bar. It's a really big bar, but I still like it. And this thing could rocket on now. It's good for easy scalp, maybe even a little bit of a runner. But notice what happens. You end up getting a first entry, second entry that fails. This is after 230, but it's just right there. I mean, it's like 231. So if you really wanted to take that trade, if it breaks higher, you could. It's a little late in the day, so I recommend you don't take it. But there it is anyway. So yeah, quick lesson today. There's just not a lot of trades. So, but there it is. Back out and you see the old day again. Not much at all. I mean, it's just hard to trade these quick reversals, and you had to be careful going short early on. And once you got confirmed range here, if you get something off the consistently, you can take it. And, I mean, there's only one off the lows here that I really liked. So just not much going on, but that's how I saw it today. Hope you had a good trading day. Hope you didn't get tripped up too bad here. Just be careful in this stuff because it can definitely trip you up. But yeah, you can see most of the movement all came in one move early this morning. And then after that, it was just mostly sideways. And it's not consistent lows here, not consistent highs until real late in the day. I mean, it's pretty obvious late in the day we kind of were in this range here. So anyway, I'm going to wrap it up. We'll be back again to do it tomorrow. One thing real quickly, I'm thinking about taking off Thursday and Friday, taking the whole days off. I'm not sure yet. It depends on the weather. I've got some outdoor activities. I've got something I'm working on, and I need to take advantage of the last couple of sunny days before it gets too cold outside. And so if the weather's right, I'm going to take those 2 days off. It'll just depend on the weather. Right now, it looks like it's going to be bright and sunny all week here. So if that continues and the weather holds up, the current weather projections hold up, I will be taking Thursday and Friday off. So just kind of a heads up. That'll only affect us here for Thursday, really. But anyway, I'll update you closer to the end of the week when I know more. But I'm going to wrap it up. This is Matt with PriceActionTradingSystem.com, and we'll see you next time.